Every ancient civilization that vanished without a trace, explained in a few minutes. 1. The Indus Valley Civilization. The Indus Valley Civilization was not a small, forgotten tribe. It was one of the great urban civilizations of the ancient world, with cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, planned streets, drainage systems, trade networks, and a level of organization that still surprises archaeologists. But the strangest part is not that it existed. The strangest part is how quietly it faded. Unlike Egypt or Mesopotamia, the Indus world left no clearly readable royal propaganda, no easy list of kings, no long victory inscriptions explaining who ruled, who conquered, and who destroyed whom. Its script remains undeciphered, which means one of the largest civilizations of the Bronze Age is still partly silent. We can walk through its ruins, but we cannot fully hear its voice. The collapse was probably not one single disaster. Scholars often point to climate change, shifting rivers, weakening trade, and gradual urban decline. But that only makes the disappearance more haunting. There was no final dramatic scene preserved for us. No last king speaking from a burning palace. The cities emptied, the system dissolved, and a civilization that once organized thousands of lives became a puzzle made of bricks, seals, and unanswered questions. 2. The Minoans. The Minoans lived on Crete and built one of the most fascinating cultures of the ancient Mediterranean. Their palaces, especially Knossos, were filled with colorful art, storage rooms, ritual spaces, and signs of a society connected by trade and sea power. They were not remembered as an empire of giant armies, but as a civilization of ships, symbols, and palaces. But the detail that makes the Minoan story so powerful is that nature may have struck before enemies finished the work. The eruption of Thera, one of the most violent volcanic events of the ancient world, sent ash, earthquakes, and possibly tsunamis across the region. It did not necessarily erase the Minoans in one day, but it may have wounded their world deeply. After that, Mycenaean influence from mainland Greece grew stronger on Crete. Palaces were damaged or abandoned. The old Minoan system lost its center. The civilization did not vanish like smoke, but its identity was swallowed. Its language, religion, and power faded into a new order. What remains are frescoes, ruins, and the feeling that an entire island culture was hit first by the earth, then by history. 3. The Mycenaeans. The Mycenaeans were the warrior kings of Bronze Age Greece. Their world gave later Greeks memories of heroes, palaces, bronze weapons, and stories that may have echoed into the legends of the Trojan War. They built fortified centers like Mycenae, Tiryns, and Pylos. Their rulers stored goods, controlled labor, and wrote records in Linear B, an early form of Greek. But around the end of the Bronze Age, their world began to break. Palaces burned, trade routes failed. Writing disappeared in many places. The Eastern Mediterranean entered a period of collapse so severe that entire systems of kingship and exchange fell apart. The Sea Peoples, earthquakes, internal rebellion, drought, and economic stress have all been suggested as part of the disaster. The most disturbing detail is that the Mycenaeans did not simply lose a war. They lost the structure that made their civilization recognizable. The palace economy vanished. Literacy declined. Greece entered centuries with fewer written records. A world of kings and scribes turned into a darker age of smaller communities and memory. Later, Greeks would sing about heroes, but the actual palaces of those heroes were already dead. Now, before we continue, if you like understanding the darker side of history without wasting time, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps this kind of content reach more people. Let's move forward. 4. The Hittites. The Hittites ruled a powerful empire from Anatolia in what is now Turkey. They fought Egypt, controlled important routes, and left behind archives of clay tablets that show a complex state with laws, diplomacy, treaties, and royal politics. This was not a minor kingdom. At its height, it was one of the great powers of the ancient Near East. But the Hittite Empire collapsed during the wider Bronze Age crisis. Their capital, Hattusa, was abandoned and destroyed. The old imperial structure disappeared. The detail that makes this collapse so heavy is that the Hittites knew how to negotiate with other great powers. They knew war, treaties, succession struggles, and famine. But the crisis that came was bigger than one enemy. Climate stress, internal weakness, attacks, and broken trade may all have played a role. The empire fractured into smaller states. The name survived in pieces, but the imperial heart was gone. Hattusa, once full of scribes, walls, temples, and royal authority, became a ruin. The Hittites did not vanish because they were simple. They vanished because even complex states can fail when too many supports break at once. 5. The Norte Chico civilization. Norte Chico, also called Caral Supe, is one of the oldest known civilizations in the Americas. It developed on the coast of Peru thousands of years ago with monumental architecture, large platform mounds, sunken plazas, and organized communities. What makes it unusual is that it seems to have built complexity without the same kind of obvious warfare or pottery that archaeologists often expect in early civilizations. But the mystery is not only how it rose, it is how its great centers stopped being central. The people of Norte Chico lived in a challenging environment, where rivers, fishing zones, agriculture, and climate patterns all mattered. If those systems shifted, the balance could become fragile very quickly. Over time, centers were abandoned or lost importance. The civilization did not leave behind a simple written explanation because there was no readable chronicle telling us why the plazas emptied. Archaeologists can study architecture, food remains, and settlement patterns, but the human decision at the center is still quiet. At some point, people stopped building the old world and moved into another one. 6. The ancestral Puebloans. The ancestral Puebloans built some of the most striking settlements in North America. Places like Chaco Canyon and Mesa Verde show complex architecture, cliff dwellings, roads, ceremonial spaces, and communities adapted to a difficult landscape. To modern eyes, the stone rooms built into cliffs can look almost impossible, as if people were trying to hide from the world. But they were not simply hiding. They were creating a society shaped by climate, agriculture, ritual, and regional connection. The problem is that this world came under pressure. Drought, resource stress, social conflict, and changing political or religious structures may have pushed communities to leave major centers. By the late 13th century, many famous sites were abandoned. The detail that is often misunderstood is that the people did not vanish as human beings. Their descendants live on among modern Pueblo peoples. What vanished was a particular world of settlements, roads, and ceremonial centers. The ruins feel empty, but the story did not end in emptiness. It changed location, form, and memory. 7. The Maya cities of the Classic period. The Maya did not vanish completely. That is the first thing that has to be understood. Maya people still exist today, but many of the great classic Maya cities, especially in the southern lowlands, were abandoned or dramatically reduced after centuries of power. Cities that once raised temples, carved monuments, and recorded royal histories became silent under the forest. The old explanation imagined sudden disappearance. The real story is more complex and more disturbing. There were wars between city-states, environmental stress, droughts, pressure on agriculture, political competition, and rulers who may have lost the ability to prove that they could protect the cosmic and earthly order. When kings could no longer deliver stability, stone monuments were not enough. The jungle did not destroy the Maya civilization in one night. It covered the evidence after people had already made choices, suffered crises, and moved away. The great cities became ruins, but not because the people had no intelligence or warning. They vanished as political centers because their system could no longer hold together. 8. The Khmer Empire. The Khmer Empire built Angkor, one of the most extraordinary urban and religious landscapes in the world. Its temples, reservoirs, canals, and monuments show a civilization capable of organizing water, labor, devotion, and kingship on a massive scale. Angkor Wat alone is enough to prove the ambition of the empire. But the same water system that helped make Angkor powerful may also reveal its weakness. Managing water in a monsoon environment required constant control. Too much water could be destructive. Too little could be disastrous. Archaeological research has suggested that droughts, floods, infrastructure failure, religious change, and political pressure all played roles in Angkor's decline. The city was not erased from existence, but its old imperial function faded. Power shifted. The center moved. The temples remained while the machinery of empire weakened around them. What makes Angkor haunting is that its stones survived better than its system. The monument stayed visible, but the civilization that made them had already changed beyond recognition. 9. Great Zimbabwe. Great Zimbabwe was once the center of a powerful African kingdom connected to gold, cattle, trade, stone architecture, and long-distance exchange across the Indian Ocean world. Its walls were built without mortar, rising in curves and enclosures that still stand as proof of remarkable skill and organization. For a long time, outsiders refused to believe Africans had built it. That false denial became one of the darker modern chapters in the site's history. But the truth is clear. Great Zimbabwe was an African achievement. The real mystery is not whether its people could build it. The real question is why its power declined. Environmental pressure, overgrazing, changing trade routes, political shifts, and resource strain have all been suggested. The site was eventually abandoned as a major center, and power moved elsewhere. Its disappearance was not a disappearance of people, but of a capital's importance. The walls remained, but the kingdom's center of gravity moved away, leaving stone behind as a witness. 10. The Nabateans. The Nabateans are most famous for Petra, the rose-colored city carved into rock. But Petra was more than a beautiful ruin. It was a trade hub, a place shaped by desert knowledge, water engineering, caravan routes, incense, spices, and wealth moving between worlds. The Nabateans understood the desert in a way outsiders did not. Their power came from controlling routes and surviving where others struggled. But trade routes can shift. Empires can absorb what they once negotiated with. Rome annexed the Nabatean kingdom in the 2nd century AD, and Petra gradually lost some of its old importance. Later earthquakes and changing economic patterns weakened it further. The haunting detail is that Petra looks eternal because the rock remains, but the life that made it powerful depended on movement, merchants, animals, water channels, markets, taxes, and roads. When movement changed, the city became a monument to a vanished network. The stone survived. The world that needed it did not. 11. Cahokia. Cahokia, near the Mississippi River, was once one of the largest urban centers north of Mexico. It had massive earthen mounds, plazas, neighborhoods, ritual spaces, and signs of a complex society that drew people from different regions. At its height, it may have held tens of thousands of people. This was not a scattered village, it was a major city. But Cahoquia's decline remains one of the great mysteries of North American archaeology. Environmental strain, flooding, drought, social tension, political instability, and resource pressure may have contributed. A city built from earth, labor, ritual, and authority began to lose population. By the time Europeans arrived centuries later, Cahoquia as a major urban power was already gone. The detail that makes it unsettling is how little most people know about it. A great city rose, organized a landscape, shaped lives, and then faded from common memory. Its mounds remained, but its voice did not carry into the modern imagination the way Rome or Egypt did. Cahoquia vanished twice, once as a city, and again from the stories many people were taught. 12. The Rapa Nui civilization of Easter Island. Rapa Nui is famous for the moai, the giant stone figures that stare across Easter Island with faces that feel older than memory. For a long time, the popular story said the islanders destroyed themselves completely by cutting down trees, exhausting resources, and collapsing into violence. But the real history is more complicated. Environmental pressure did matter. Deforestation changed the island. Resources became harder to manage. But later, European contact, disease, slave raids, and colonial disruption also devastated the population. The old simple version blamed the islanders alone, as if their civilization were only a warning about self-destruction. The deeper version is darker because it includes both internal strain and outside catastrophe. What vanished was not the people entirely, because Rapa Nui descendants still exist. What vanished was the older world that built, moved, and understood the moai within its original system of meaning. The statues remained standing or fallen, but the society around them was broken and transformed. The island did not lose its mystery because we found explanations. The explanations made the mystery more human. These civilizations did not all vanish in the same way. Some were absorbed, some migrated, some collapsed slowly. Some lost their cities while their descendants survived. Some were buried under jungle, desert, forest, or modern forgetting. But they all reveal the same uncomfortable truth. A civilization can look permanent to the people living inside it, and still be more fragile than anyone wants to believe. Walls remain, temples remain, roads remain, bones, pottery, seals, and stones remain. But the voices disappear first, then the names, then the reasons. And centuries later, we stand in the ruins trying to understand the moment when ordinary people realized their world was not going to continue. If this video helped you see the ancient world differently, share it with someone who loves lost history, leave a like, and subscribe for more stories from the past. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.